Hello folks, I hope that you are just having a great day today. Today we're going to take a look at another Fred Saberhagen book in the Book of Swords series. Today we're going to be taking a look at the third to last book in the series, and the last book of the second trilogy of the sequels, and the third trilogy overall in the Book of Swords series, and that book is Mindsword's story. So we're taking a look at this for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Last night I finished the book for the first time. Knocked it out after I spent about an hour and a half reading it last night. And I enjoyed it. Thought it was a lot of fun. So I'm definitely going to move forward to the next book, which is the penultimate book in the series, which is Wayfinder's story. So what is this series all about? As a reminder, Fred Saberhagen wrote a series of books in the 70s called Empire of the East that was set in a far future post-apocalyptic fantasy world that still had some post-apocalyptic elements to it, like some science fiction elements to it, and Earth. So we're on kind of this future Earth, if you will, and it was very important. It sold well. It was a big part of Appendix N. It was influential, and then in the 80s, he wrote a trilogy called The Complete Book of Swords, which was incredibly good in the same world. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the future. It's not really a sequel, it's just set in the same world. And the world has changed. It's become more of a fantasy world now than it has been in the past, than the Empire of the East trilogy was. And The Complete Book of Swords was my second adult book series that I read after Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. I read it as a kid, 5th grade. I loved it. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was very influential on me. I've read it 4 or 5 times now. This is my first time going through and reading the Complete Book of Swords series for you, the initial trilogy for you. I also have read one book of the sequel, Wheeler's story, and I own the next 2, but I just never read them. So set out to read book 5, which was Sight Blinder's story, and then I kept going. Stonecutter story, and I just finished, Mindsword's story, which is the 6th book, sequel to the trilogy, 9th book in the series by Fred Saberhagen. So we're going to be going ahead and reviewing it for you. I'm going to be knocking it out for you, and it should be a lot of fun. In this series, it opens up with the main character. And basically what's happening is that the gods that Vulcan in particular has been quested by the other gods to create 12 of these unique individual god-forged swords that are called the swords that are part of a game that the gods have created. And they're going to sprinkle the swords around the world. So Vulcan sets up his forge. In the prelude to book 1, he brings in some smiths from humans to help him out, and also to slake the bloods, to use their blood to slake the thirst. Only one of the smiths that he brings over survives. That's Jord. And Jord is one of his arms chopped off and is given the sword Town Saver as payment, and he survives. He is told by Vulcan that the sword is his, and to give it to his firstborn child. His firstborn child was already born, and unfortunately he's going to die saving a town with this sword called Town Saver. He's going to stop an entire raid that happens against the town, but he's going to die himself. And the second-born sword, Mark, is going to inherit the sword. He takes it with him and flees the town. And he's being chased and pursued by a lot of different people, including a lot of higher stakes. So he's fleeing. And Mark will become your primary point of view character thus for the first trilogy. All the other characters, Sir Andrew, the Derek, Ben, who is Mark's best friend, who will become Mark's best friend in the first book, and lots of others. Nestor, Dragon Slayer, are going to have take turns as point of view characters. There's also a lot of bad guys that have point of view characters too, which is very interesting. In the later book series, there is a big bad called Master Wood, or the Ancient One. He was the most powerful sorcerer in the world. who has moved into the role of the big bad. And in the first book, Wound Healer story, you'll be introduced to somebody who is a servant of the big bad, and that servant is going to be the primary antagonist for the first novel, Wound Healer's story. And so now basically what's going to wind up happening is that we're now 6 books into the sequels with Mindsword's story. And this book, as you can tell from the title, is all about Mindsword. A gentleman named Murat, who is the crown prince of Combe, has found the Mindsword. And what he wants to do is he wants to bring it home, and he wants to bring it to a woman whom he has been smitten with. Her name is Princess Christina. In a previous book, Coin Spinner's story, Murat, who is from Combe, stole the sword Wound Healer from them with the help of Coin Spinner, which is the sword of luck. So he used one of the swords to steal another sword, and a lot of unlucky things happened to the guards, to the locks, that allowed him to steal Wound Healer's sword and abscond. Wound Healer, which is a sword that heals people, and abscond with it, take it back to his kingdom, so that they can find, so that they can heal the regent of the kingdom, who's too sick to actually make the journey and survive the journey from Combe to the country where all of our key people are: Mark, Christina, Ben, and many of the swords are. So he has used his Coin Spinner story to steal Wound Healer's sword, but he feels bad about it. He's having pangs of conscience. He also cares for Christina. He was somebody who was invited to her thing. He was very impressed with her, and he cares for her. So he wants to make it up for her by bringing her another sword. So he's been questing for Mindsword, which is the sword of glory. The person who draws Mindsword will be just full. The people who see him will be full of love and loyalty, and will not betray the person who draws the sword of glory. So he has found the sword of glory, and he's now bringing it back. But he promises he's not going to draw it. This is Princess Christina's sword, not his own. But he wants to bring it back to the place. In the second chapter, we find out that one of the big bads of the first trilogy, in particular the last book of the first trilogy, the third book of swords, is the Dark King, who wielded the Mindsword, and he has he's up in the mountains where the Mindsword was after he lost it. And he's been just kind of as a hermit in one of the local villages, and he has survived, blinded up in the mountains. He's actually survived for years and years. So one of the primary antagonists is actually still alive, but he's actually going to start on a quest for the Mindsword, because he can tell with his magic that the Mindsword has been retaken. Now his quest for the Mindsword is going to step it up a notch. And he's going to set out to serve the person who has the Mindsword. And that's, pretty much it. You have those two swords are going to be, so you have a quest for the Mindsword by the Dark King, the Volcana, one of the big bads, as well as Baron Murat, who's the crown prince of Combe. And he's bringing the sword back, and he runs into things. And one of the interesting things that happens is that Murat starts out as a good guy, and he slowly is following over the course of the novel as he becomes more and more seduced by the power of the Mindsword. So I enjoy that. I think that Fritz Saberhagen did a really good job with that, and it's to his credit. And you can see it slowly over time. But he still has some of his morals even at the end, but they're a lot less than they were at the beginning. So I do like that, and I do enjoy that. But I enjoy the story. I think it's a 7 out of 10. I think Fritz Saberhagen does a great job with it. I think it's a very strong entry into the series. And I've given every sequel a 7 out of 10, except for Stonecutter Story, which I give a 9 out of 10 to. I loved it. And because they're relatively consistent, and I enjoy it. So next up is Wayfinder's story. Tonight I'll read the first 2 chapters of Wayfinder's story. My hope is that I finish the series. Although, of course, if I get bored, or if I get turned on by something else, or if I get distracted, You know, I'm not going to pledge myself to do it, but my goal is to finish the Lost Book of Swords series. It wasn't. When I got started with book 5, you know, Sight Blinder story, it was just to keep reading and see how far I went. I didn't think I was going to finish it, but now I'm deep into it, and now my goal is to see if I can finish it. So we'll see how that goes. And it should be able to, you know, I've read these books in about 5 or 6 hours each. They're in some cases a little under 200 pages, or some in these last 3 books they're a little under 200 pages each. In the previous books they're all a little over 200 pages each, like 202, 204, 206. But in this last books, the first book was like 175 pages. Although again, it was 175 pages in this oversized book, so it took me, you know, some time to knock out. But now we're going to be knocking out the last 2 books, which is which is called Endgame, and that's it. All right, I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read the stuff in the series? Have you read this novel? I will be more than happy to engage you with it further in the comments below. If you want to talk more about the ending, about some of the details in the novel that I didn't want to spoil for people, I'll be more than happy to engage with that further. If you like this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more of these that follow fantasy, science fiction, and horror. And then finally, hey, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day for watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, right? And the fact you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling. I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.